We've sifted through the data of over 4 million workouts on the Coach Parry training app to bring you insights that can revolutionize your running journey. Whether you're a seasoned runner or just starting out, these 9 lessons will transform the way you approach your training, helping you reach your goals. We'll also share 4 simple habits that every one of our successful athletes develops. Those that don't develop them generally don't reach their goals. This video is going to be a little bit longer than our usual videos on our channel, but it's super important. I really want to urge you to get rid of any distractions, turn your notifications off, and really dive deep into this video. If you apply these lessons and habits in your training, you will be a different runner a year from now. The data doesn't lie. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get into lesson 1.
So the first lesson is that not every single workout gets done. And I know that's a bit weird, but the truth of the matter is, and you know this with your training, is every now and again you do miss a session. One thing we found with the athletes that train with us here at CoachParry.com, the ones that get the best results are the ones that follow the training plans to the letter. They do everything they're supposed to do at the right intensity, at the right volume. The athletes that miss a lot of sessions obviously don't reach their goals, and the athletes that think they need to add more generally don't do well either. But that is a bit of a double-edged sword. So the athletes that do follow the sessions and get the results are great. But when it comes to missing the odd session, it's okay to miss 1 or 2. We don't want athletes to try and play catch-up, because that's also when you start messing with your recovery. If you miss 1 or 2, let it go and move on. When you start missing multiple sessions or missing the same session every single week, that's when it does become a problem. That's when your training schedule is not working to your life. So whether it's your Tuesday interval session or if it's your Saturday long run that you keep missing week after week after week, that's when you need to jump into the forum on the Coach Parry platform and chat to one of the coaches to find out how to rejig your plan to make sure that it works for you.
The more I work with females over the age of 45, the more I realize that strength training is the one defining factor. Yes, running is really good from a cardiovascular perspective, looking after our heart and our lungs, but strength training is really the key factor that's going to help you with your bone mineral density, helping you not lose so much lean muscle mass and actually reversing those aging effects over time. And I mentioned specifically females, but this is also true for males as well. Both males and females start losing lean muscle mass as early as their 30s, and that becomes far more exponential as we get towards our 40s and 50s. Of course, this is greater in females, but males will greatly benefit from doing strength training, in particular resistance training for their running.
So the other day, Brad was actually telling me that when he was doing triathlons, he found that he ran much better than he did when he wasn't doing triathlons. And recently, he was training for the Cape Town Marathon and training at a high weekly volume, actually, doing 12 hours a week, but only doing 3 hours of running, and he didn't feel fatigued at all leading up to his marathon. So what's the secret here? It's the power of cross-training. It's something that we often neglect as runners. We only run and do nothing else, but cross-training can be a very valuable tool for you as a runner, both to improve your fitness by adding more aerobic work into your training without the impact, and also helping you recover, so it can be nice in between training. Cross-training is also very useful for the injured runner. If you're injured, you can't do anything that's going to stress the muscle you've injured, but there are often other activities like stationary bike or swimming or rowing that can also help you maintain your fitness while you're working. Cross-training allows you to add or maintain volume in your training. You can build fitness if you're in the middle of a training program, and if you're injured, you can maintain your fitness so that when you come back from injury, you're not starting far worse off than you would have been if you had done nothing at all.
Just like when you order something online and the box arrives and you open it up, and what you've ordered online is surrounded and protected by bubble wrap and space filler, habit number 1 is to protect you and help you improve, and that is recovery. It's so important that you also turn your rest days green. In other words, you make sure that a rest day is an actual rest day, and that then will allow you to recover, and it protects you and makes sure that you remain uninjured and can stay consistent and complete your training so that you can perform on race day.
A few months ago, I had a crash off my bicycle, dislocated my shoulder, needed surgery, and as a result had a pretty long layoff. This affected a lot of my planning. I had a marathon plan that I was trying to train for. I needed to put that aside. And this leads me to lesson 4, having a flexible training plan. As a result of my long layoff, I needed to rethink my approach to training, rethink and replan races that I had throughout the season to come. And having the flexible training plan allows you to not be over-focused on one particular goal. Life happens. Don't be focused on exact training days and as a result potentially skip training sessions because something's come up, whereas you could have had the flexibility in the plan or allowed for some flexibility in your plan and maybe just move a couple of things around in a particular week. The same applies for cutting a session a little bit shorter if you need to. If something comes up and you can't get a full hour-and-a-half run, for example, you can do an hour run and that's really not going to have a negative effect on your training. Training plans should be flexible and allow for personalization. There's no one size fits all.
I see so many runners trying to run circles around their house to make sure that their watch lands on a specific distance. The crazy thing about this is that all GPS watches, all GPS devices have an error on either side. It could be up to 150 meters. So if you are running around trying to get this distance onto 10K or 6.2 miles, the funny thing is that you're actually probably off by about 150 meters anyways. And so it actually makes this whole concept slightly irrational. I'm very OCD and I have learned to run to time as opposed to distance. And the reason we want to do this is that there might be days where you are feeling really, really good. And so you will push a little bit harder to hit that distance that you always are running. But the key thing there is that you don't want to be chasing these distances in your training. You want to only be running to time because there may be another day where you are feeling a little bit tired and that's normal. And so to try and chase that distance and try and beat that time that you got that distance is really going to be to your detriment. And so try, I know it's hard, but try to ignore the distance on your watch because the GPS is going to be slightly off anyways, whereas time is constant. And that is the one thing that we can then rely on. That is going to be your constant variable in your training.
The next lesson is training for where you are and not where you want to be. I always say there's training that you want to do and training that you actually should do. And those sometimes can look like two different things. All runners want to do as much as they can do, run as fast as they could and do all the fancy sessions. But sometimes where you're at, it might be better for you to stick to doing something a little bit more simpler, doing more easy volume and scaling back intensity until you're fitter. Training for a beginner looks very different for training for an advanced or an elite athlete. As you get stronger and fitter, we add more complexity to your training plan as you build your capacity to do more work. So we always say that you've got to figure out where you are right now as an athlete and train in a way that matches your fitness level. If you fail to do this, you might find yourself running the risk of overtraining or at worst, injury.
This is lesson number 6. Doing sessions at the right intensity. Over the years, I've picked up that people who do their high intensity workouts consistently too hard end up being sore, stiff, and unable to execute on their other workouts. In other words, there's a carried over fatigue from doing easy sessions too hard, but also from doing your hard sessions too difficult. What you want to do is to do your sessions, whether they're easy or hard, at the intensity that's appropriate for where you are right now as an individual, where your fitness is. And over time, what we've seen is that the runners who execute the sessions at the prescribed intensity for where they are right now are the same runners who execute on race day and get the performance that they are training for. So make sure that you are following your plan and sticking to the intensities, and those will improve over time. And you can use that improvement as you're going along to help you dial in on your race day goal.
Lesson 7 is the use of different metrics. Now, I mean different metrics. I'm talking about getting a more holistic picture of what you're doing in your training. We get different types of metrics. So you may have heard of RPE, or rate of perceived exertion. You get heart rate readings, power readings. To give you an example, you get an internal versus an external metric. Internal being what your heart rate is doing. External might be a power output. So what power output are you doing to elicit a certain heart rate response? So that's where the internal and external comes into it. So again, now we've named things like power, heart rate, rate of perceived exertion. We prescribe a lot of our training programs based on pace, but we then often get a question, what is the correct pace to be running at. And this is where the holistic picture comes into play. If you are able to use more than one metric, so things like rate of perceived exertion, heart rate, and pace, for example, that's going to give you an idea that an easy run, for example, is easy enough because it feels easy enough from the perceived exertion. The pace that's prescribed speaks the same language as that perceived exertion, and the heart rate matches the particular zone we're trying to be in. So using multiple metrics can get us to focus our training plan a little bit more accurately and to get the desired response from a training session that we are targeting for the day. However, there is just one thing to note, and it's a saying that we here at Coach Parry have: analysis paralysis. We have a couple of clients who are very focused on training data and every metric possible. Smartwatches give us so many training metrics, but by using so much data and taking so many things into account, we often lose sight of the actual training goal for a particular session and just the sheer enjoyment of the run. So just be cautious. As much as we do say use multiple metrics, just be cautious that you're not overthinking metrics alone and losing sight of what you're actually trying to achieve in a training session.
Consistency. This is so important in your running. One of the really vital habits that you need for running. And when you're looking at consistency, you want to look back over the last 40-day period. How has your running been? Have you run 3 to 4 times a week? Have you done strength training consistently for the last 40 days? And even longer as well, because this is going to build your endurance aerobic base, and this is what you need to get you through your race goals.
For the next lesson, think about the puzzle game Jenga. A tall tower with many pieces stacked in. You can pull out a piece or two here and the structure still remains intact. It's only when you remove haphazardly lots of pieces that it falls apart. So think of your training plan as a similar thing, a tower that you stack up as you put all the training pieces into place. So we're often worried that if we miss a session here or a session there, the whole thing will fall apart, but that's often not true, just like in the puzzle game. And the thing here is the long run. The long run is very, very important to training. It's important for marathon runners. It's also important for short distance runners to build fitness. Even our short distance plans still have long runs in them. But if you miss a long run, it doesn't mean that your whole training plan has fallen apart. Even for a marathon, if you've missed a 3-hour long run, your training is not over, because like the Jenga puzzle game, you can afford to miss one piece here and one piece there. It's the volume of work you do over the duration of the plan. So don't get too worked up about missing a long run here and there. If you miss a lot in a cycle, different story. But for one run, don't be too stressed. Don't adjust your training plan. Don't move it to the next week, because then you're going to transfer that load onto a different week. Rather just carry on and accept that you're going to be training over a long time and build fitness along the way.
Runners that we see that are successful have this exact habit in their training. It's when they start falling in love with the process. I know for myself personally, when I have been successful in races, it has been because I've absolutely loved the training of it and not necessarily race day. I've fallen in love with the process of training. And this is really, really important, because what tends to happen then is you are so much more consistent, because training doesn't feel like a chore, and you will then get the results you're looking for from that consistency. Scientists have studied that we are all differently motivated, right? Some of us are intrinsically motivated and some of us are extrinsically motivated. So what does that mean, right? If you're extrinsically motivated, you are motivated by a particular race, by a goal. And so that is what's going to get you up every day, is because you're wanting to do your best in that goal. Some people are intrinsically motivated. They just want to do it because that's what's in them. And so sort of finding that ability to be slightly more intrinsically motivated is really going to help you to fall in love with the process, as opposed to having this scary goal that's getting you out of bed every day. Rather find a way that you can get motivated intrinsically, and as opposed to just by the end result.
Lesson number 9, one of the most neglected aspects of training. We have to fuel for the exercise that we are doing. Now, there are 2 ways of looking at fueling. We can either do what we call fueling in exercise. In other words, while we are doing the exercise that we are doing, we are providing the energy that we need, or we can fuel for exercise. And what that means is that between bouts of exercise, we are really looking after our nutrition and doing the things that we are supposed to do when we do them, so that when we arrive to do sessions, we are fully loaded and we have the energy that we need to do the sessions that we're doing. Which one works better than the other is really up to you as an individual. I prefer fueling for exercise, so making sure that I'm taking care of a well-balanced nutritional plan during the day, which means I can then train hard when I need to train hard and carry on fueling, and then I will do some additional fueling for very long run sessions that are lasting 2 hours or longer. However, if you are leading a busy lifestyle, if you are finding it difficult in particular to refuel immediately after exercise because you're on the go, you've got to get kids ready, get them to school, or you've got to get through traffic and make sure that you get to the office on time, and you just don't have time to get your day in order so that you can really make sure you are taking care of your nutrition, then you must fuel in exercise. And that means that you've got to have energy available in the form of an energy drink, gels, or something similar that you can consume while you are physically exercising. If you do not make sure that you are fueling for the exercise that you are doing, or fueling in exercise, you are going to run into low energy problems. You're going to feel like you're tired all the time. You're going to be unable to sustain the training that you're doing. You're not going to be able to recover properly between workouts, and you are going to get into a situation where you either get sick or injured and you're unable to maintain the consistency of your training. If you're anything like me, you've watched this video, you're serious about your running, and you know the strategies we've shared with you will improve your running. That is exactly why we've created the Coach Parry training platform. Click on the screen now to get access to our entire library of training frameworks, live strength training, members only calls, and community, to get access to a simple step-by-step process that will make you the best runner you can be.